Hi Bible Art Journalers! It's March 2019 and this month in the Vacaville Bible Art Journaling Collaborative we are going to be working on some projects using our washi. So the first thing we're going to be doing is my story in washi, which is a lesson from Tonya from messybible.net, and I'll try and link that below if you're interested in looking that up. And then the other thing we're going to be doing is using our washi to as a base for some mixed media fun, get our hands dirty, use a little paint and a little stamping ink, and it should be a really good time. If you haven't seen this before, my washi here is on rings, and I just take about 10 wraps and put it around each of these. These are little embroidery thread holders, and so I just wrap a few around. This way this can travel with me when I go on my trailer trips, or when I am able to bring more of the products with me to a journaling group or something. This maybe is getting a little ridiculous, but I don't have to carry a bunch of the rolls, and so this fits nicely on the top of my journaling bag, and it's just a fun way to carry a big variety. Then I don't have to try and pick, oh my goodness, I only want to take like these two along. So this is a handy trick if you haven't already seen it. Today we're going to be working directly in the Bible on my video here, but if you're nervous about going straight into the Bible with a new technique, one of the things I do in my class, and I plan to have the class do this, is take the deli paper and do that mixed media on the deli paper, and then they can actually just put it into the Bible by putting down gesso, smoothing it out, and then actually ripping or cutting the deli paper and putting it into the Bible, just like with the napkin technique. So if you're not familiar with the napkin technique, I do have a video on that as well. The only difference with the deli paper is that you have to only do the gesso underneath, not on top. So I'm going to get started just by pulling some random washi strips, and I'm just going to stick them on the page here and there, kind of put a nice mix of a couple different patterns, 2 or 3, 4 if you want, and just kind of changing the way they're shaped, rip them to be different sizes, and just cover different areas on the page until you have some white space left and some washi strips put down. And now I'm also going to take some washi and mask an area where I want to stamp a word when I'm all done. So I'm going to use this orange for that. In our group meetup, when we work on the deli paper, we're actually going to decide what part we're going to take out of the deli paper to put onto the page. And so instead of masking a spot where we want to write something, we're going to actually use a circle or oval cutter to cut out of the deli paper where we want to write our or stamp our caption. And if you've watched a lot of other Bible journaling videos, you've probably seen people use washi to mask over the verse that they want to highlight so that they can do their art all around it and make sure that that verse still stays standing out on the page. So I just wanted to mention that in case somebody hadn't seen that. I also wanted to quickly make note of the Teflon sheets that I have both on my desk and for sticking in my Bible to protect the other pages when I start painting. These I got on Amazon. They are Zootcase brand heat press Teflon sheets. They come 6 to a package for about $12, which is substantially cheaper than the ones sold in the craft stores. And They are slick, they are smooth, and you can mix mediums on them. And so this is a wonderful little tip that I learned from one of my new buddies that is in a teachers and leaders group that I've joined. So I wanted to pass that information on to you. There are some brands that are not smooth. Silizo is one of the other Teflon sheet brands sold on Amazon, and they have a texture to them. So if I was trying to write with a pen, it would leave little bumps. So you don't want that. The sheets are pretty big. They come in a roll, and they're divided into 16 by 20-inch sheets. And so to get the one under my page, I think I cut one of the sheets into 4. I think the price has actually gone down since I bought them, but if you've got a group of buddies who Bible journal with you, maybe you'd want to go in and split the pack, or you can use them to line your cookie sheets and do some baking. Don't mind me just spreading washi love here and going on about Teflon sheets. I don't have any affiliate links, but I just love people to know if there's something out there that can help this be more affordable and helpful. I like to share that. So it's looking pretty good. We've got washi here and there and some nice white space. And so next we are going to get a little messy and get painting. I've got some apple barrel paints, just some basic cheap acrylics, and then the white is Liquitex, but that just because that's what I had. I tend to buy the bigger bottles of those, and I'm just going to go ahead and use my fingers, have a paper towel handy, and we're just going to smear this on around the washi, and here we go. So you see I'm rubbing right along the edge of the washi. It's okay to kind of get the paint up onto the edge of the washi so that it blends nicely. I am hoping to get all the white space covered. Yes, I am going to go over some of the white washi with color, and there's not really a wrong way. It's just the point of putting the colored washi down was to actually have those colors be on the page. So I'm going to work around the colored stuff. The more pressure you apply to the paint when you're pushing it onto the page, the more transparent it's going to be. So I'm using a very light, oops, I just got it on the other page. I think I'm going to stay away from the center here and just try and work to the outside of the page, and then I'll move the Teflon sheet into the gutter when I want to finish this part. I'm using all my fingers here. What was I saying? Oh yes. So I'm using a light hand here so that I can apply the paint pretty thick, and I want that rich color that comes from the paint being very thick on the page. Whereas maybe later I will paint over some of the verse words, and I will smear it on in a thin layer with heavy pressure so that it spreads across the page and stays transparent. And you'll see Bible journalers using the paint scraping technique with a gift card, or oh, I'm using all my fingers, but I got 4 colors and 3 fingers, and my pinky's not very talented. Anyway, you can use the paint cards to scrape your paint on, and with that heavy pressure, it's very transparent. I'm speeding up the video to double time, but hopefully you'll get the gist of what I'm doing by um, making sure that colors are spread around the page pretty evenly, and you can do some blending of some of your colors. I love that this is a lot like being a kid again, playing in finger paint, and I used to get finger paint every year for Christmas, so when I was a kid, and so this has been just a really fun thing to get my hands in here and do this. If you are aversive to sticking your hands in the paint, you certainly could use a paintbrush or a sponge or something to put this on. So I'm just going to keep working here, getting all of the white space covered. So I have almost all of the outside edge where I want it. So now I'm going ahead and I'm actually just rubbing the paint across all my fingers after putting my finger in, and then getting that really thin layer on my fingers, and then just really applying heavy pressure so that it spreads out as transparently over the words as I can get it. And I am avoiding the verse that I'm going to reference. I'm kind of painting above and below it. Now I am going to take that Teflon sheet and tuck it right down into the gutter as deep as I can, kind of almost like flossing your teeth, wiggling it down into that space. I want it nice and tight so that I can run my finger down in there without any fear of it getting over onto the other page. And where I get a little too much paint on that washi right there, I can just wipe the paint off with my finger. Again, just applying more pressure while the paint's still wet, and especially on the washi where the surface is slick. Now through the magic of video, my first layer is dry, and I'm going to add back in some white space, a couple bigger spaces and some smaller spaces to add another dimension. I'm also going to let this layer dry before I move on to the next layer. So now I'm going to grab one of my stencils, and I chose this kind of chevron arrow pattern because some of my washi has that shape on it. And I'm just going to use some more of my white acrylic paint, and I'm going to spread it out on my palette very thin, so I'm getting very little on my finger. Just really spread it out here. And then I'm going to very lightly dab it through the stencil. Well, I'm not sure what's more colorful, my hands or the page, but now we're going to do our next layer, which is stamping. And I'm picking some small pattern stamps, and these were from Recollections. You can see this first one is sort of a honeycomb pattern with little bees on it, and there's flowers on the other one. I'm using Stazon ink. It's a permanent waterproof ink once it dries, and with the acrylic paint on the page, if it was really juicy, it still would not bleed through. But my pads get used a lot. for my classes and for my own personal use, and so they tend to dry out pretty quickly. So this isn't going to be really juicy, but I want a nice light clear transfer, so this will work fine for this. And I'm going to just use some of that white space so that I can really see the image. This lighter green is also a good place where it's going to show up pretty well when I stamp. I try to keep the lids on my Stazon so it doesn't dry out, but it's just the nature of the ink. So here's some of the smaller flowers, and I'm actually putting my hand behind and just putting my finger right in the one small spot where I want the stamp to touch the page, and then just kind of rubbing my finger up to give counter pressure rather than pushing the whole stamp down, so that I don't get a big square stamped on my page, just because the pattern is so tiny that it would really show that solid square. So there it is, all the way around the page. I've got some little bits of some pattern now added, and I'm going to remove my mask where I want to stamp my word joy. My verse is Proverbs 10:28, and it says, "The hope of the righteous brings joy." And so I wanted to stamp the word joy, and it's just been one of those weeks where a lot of things have kind of tried patience, and these are Kelly Creates stamps. I wanted to mention that. They were also from Michael's, and they're sort of a brush lettering style. So, joy. Um, when you have one of those weeks where you're feeling like a lot of things are coming up against you and kind of pushing your buttons, and you maybe feel like you didn't hold it all together the way you should have, you can keep coming back, and you can say when you've done wrong. You can stay in right standing with God, and that's all that righteousness is us continually falling back on His grace and asking for His forgiveness. And um, when we have that righteousness, it is our hope and it leads to joy. And so, even when you're not feeling it in the moment, it's a choice to continue to look back to our God, our hope, and to claim that joy. And it will come. And so here I'm just kind of going around the edges of that masked area, kind of giving it a sketchy, maybe mixed media journal look. And I'm going to do that around the verse as well, just to give it a little definition so it stands out. I hope you've enjoyed watching and that you'll give this a try, even though it is a little messy and fun. Um, if you have questions, you can always comment on the video. I will do some up close video now so that you can see the detail a little more in the page. After looking at this a little bit more, it didn't quite seem finished, so I ended up pulling out my Uniball Signo gel pens in white and gold and added some little accents around the journal box with the joy and some little white dots and gold dots that you can see here. This is the page I ended up doing at the meet. We did the same technique on deli paper. Then once I chose what part I wanted on my page, I used an oval cutter to cut out a space for my hope word, and then I tore the edge next to the verses, put it down with gesso, and then trimmed the edges. The only other difference was that we added some shimmer paints over the top. Some people used gold and some people used a white shimmer as in a last layer just for something different. And then everyone loved this idea from Tonya from Messy Bible for the My Story in Washi activity, which we also did in group this month.